So welcome everyone to Cal Grant 101. We are recording today's session, so it will be made available once it's posted on our website and uploaded to our YouTube channel. You also have received the PDF of this presentation, so if you did not see it in your inbox, please check your spam or junk. Sometimes firewalls at districts will block our CSAC emails, especially with the PDF attachments and also the large amount of recipients. If you are not seeing it, please email us at training@csac.ca.gov and we will send you the PDF for you to reference later. And as I said, this version is being recorded, so it will be available at a later date. At the end, if we have any time left, we can allow you to raise your hand and unmute, and then you can ask your question live. However, no need to wait until the end of the webinar. Since this is the webinar version of Zoom, we have the Q&A box, which means you can place your questions there, and then my colleagues on the line will be able to answer in real time. Just make sure you're placing a full question since my colleagues are answering behind the scenes. They don't always have the opportunity to listen to which slide I'm on. So place a full question and then they'll be able to answer it. Please use the Q&A, not the chat box. The chat is used for these fun interactions like what you're doing this weekend. But once you ask a question and then someone puts another comment in there, it scrolls up and gets lost. The Q&A box is where we're able to keep everything organized. Here's the agenda for today. We have starting off with Cal Grants A, B, and C, moving into the eligibility requirements, talking about the GPAs required for Cal Grant, the application process, and some great resources. We will take a break in between there just for a quick stretch, maybe grab another snack if you need it, and let's continue. First, I want to go over some important CSAC updates. As you know, if you've been in the world of financial aid for any amount of time, there are lots of updates. So just to point out that for high schools and districts and counties, the non-SSN GPA file layout did change. So some of those specifications were updated to align with the better FAFSA changes. This includes things like the first name was expanded to include more characters. So we did release a GSA about this, and very important for you to reach out to your student information system if you haven't already, because it does need to be reprogrammed to account for these changes so that when you are going to upload GPAs, our system accepts it because it's in the correct file layout. So I know this was just one of the many updates and it was released right around end of summer. So for our high school counselors on this webinar, you may have missed it. No worries, you still have until March 2nd to get those GPAs uploaded, and please call our school support if you are having any issues. But for the most part, you'll need to work with your student information system to get it reprogrammed. On the college end, we have Assembly Bill 789. This is aligning our Cal Grant SAP standards to the federal minimums. And I have a couple more slides coming up that goes into more detail about this. And then December 2nd is the deadline to update the college cost estimate screen. Super important because this will directly affect your student's ability to receive Cal Grant. So we really want to make sure that it's not outdated and that you're putting in correct estimates. And that's just in a week or so. So December 2nd coming up very soon. So make sure you have that on your to-do list to review and make any updates as necessary. We have a brand new California Community College FAFSA CADAA Completion dashboard. If you're from a high school or have worked with high schools, you may have been familiar with the Race to Submit dashboard. Well, now we have a new one dedicated to our community colleges. So this is a tool that's supporting the community college's Vision 2030, specifically goal number 3, which is equity and support, and number 5, to maximize financial aid for community college students. The 24-25 FAFSA applications are down approximately 2% statewide and 10% among incoming college freshmen as compared to last year. And we know, of course, that was really in part to all of the challenges of the 24-25 FAFSA. So at this point, though, we are wanting to regroup, and this dashboard is going to provide some really good data and be able to help you with your outreach efforts. So it's displaying a distinct aggregate count for all 116 campuses compared to the prior year enrollment numbers. You can filter the views by individual community college campus, district, and region. And future phases of this dashboard will enhance the data, views, and other tools to support districts and colleges. So hopefully you can start playing around with this and see how it could help your campus if you are in the community college system, and more data, more visuals that will help with our goal of having every student complete a FAFSA or CADAA. Now, going back to that Assembly Bill I briefly mentioned, so Assembly Bill 789 is talking about the new SAP standards. So in October of 2023, Assembly Bill 789 was signed that requires Cal Grant eligible institutions to adhere to a common set of SAP standards and develop and implement policies that are consistent with the federal standards. Basically, what it's saying is schools cannot have SAP policies that are more stringent than federal standards. That was the case at some campuses. This assembly bill was driven by a report released in July of 2021 titled The Overlooked Obstacle that found that 24% of first-year community college students at California schools receiving Pell did not meet SAP during their first 2 consecutive academic terms. The report found that the students who did not meet those standards had significantly more life responsibilities, such as childcare and job demands, with fewer resources, including access to food and housing, flexible work schedules, and reliable transportation. So with this in mind, Assembly Bill 789 aims to make access to financial aid more equitable to all students. And this is applicable to all of our Cal Grant participating institutions. So to go over what this means when it comes to your SAP policy, for the institutional SAP policy, we're looking for it to align with federal standards and evaluate on cumulative measures, and to not require a minimum GPA and PACE standards for each individual term. There's also a notification requirement, so we want to provide the SAP standards and appeal process information using student-friendly language. We know that's a big deal since in the financial aid world, we have a lot of acronyms and terms that people in the field understand and know, but to the student side, they're not realizing all the back-end processing that's in place, and the acronyms are not familiar. So student-friendly language, super important. Also notifying students when SAP is not met after every term, regardless of how often SAP is evaluated. So more communication, letting them know that their academic progress is being looked at, and that's can be really helpful for these students. For the maximum time frame calculation, it's saying to exclude remedial coursework from max time frame and also only include transfer credits that count toward the student's current program of study. Students could be changing majors, figuring out their career path still, and those credits could negatively impact their financial aid because they've decided to change course, change majors, and we don't want that necessarily impacting them. For financial aid appeals, campuses now need to accept both electronic and hard copies of financial aid appeals and allow students to remain on financial aid probation and continue to receive financial aid if terms of the academic plan are met. So really good and helpful for our students. We encourage you to read about the Assembly Bill, and we do have details linked in this GSA at the bottom of the slide. And review your current SAP policy and see if any updates need to be made to it. Moving into Cal Grants and other CSAC programs now. So we do have lots of information on our website, and we have some smaller programs. We do have dedicated webinars for some of these. We recently hosted the regional training for foster youth programs, and we'll also have weekly webinars on some of these topics. But we encourage you to make this information available to your students and to share our homepage with them. Chafee Grant for Foster Youth does have a separate application, so that's why we want to highlight that program specifically. With Cal Grant and middle class scholarships, students only need to submit their FAFSA or CADAA, but Chafee Grant does have a one-time application. Same with actually these smaller programs too, so CMD, GI, law enforcement personnel, and the Golden State Teacher Grant. So something to make your students and families aware of if they are qualifying for any of these other programs. Now switching to Cal Grant. So here is a good overview slide. This can be referred back to, especially if you are brand new to Cal Grant. So these grants must be used at eligible colleges in California. The link to our eligible schools list is below. It may be easier to look at the ineligible school list since that one is a lot shorter, but you can verify, just make sure, and it's kind of interesting to look at to confirm your school is Cal Grant eligible. I'm assuming if you're on this webinar, then your school is. Now, Cal Grants are for undergraduate programs, and students can receive Cal Grants for a maximum of 4 years or 400% eligibility of full-time enrollment. Two exceptions to that would be the teaching credential programs and the mandatory fifth-year programs. Cal Grant maximum lifetime eligibility is based on something called education level, or EL, at the time of first disbursement. The colleges establish their own EL policy around completed units and maximum allowable transfer units. So the college that the student's attending for their first Cal Grant disbursement is super important because that college, that campus is determining the level of the student and essentially how many years of Cal Grant they'll be eligible to receive. So if you haven't already, you'll want to review your campus's education level policy. This is at the financial aid office. So at the high school level, you will not be looking at this necessarily, but good thing to keep in mind that school or students do have that 4 years and it is dependent on how many units they've completed. So a freshman, an EL1, would have 400% or 4 years of eligibility. EL2, 300% or 3 years, and so on. So we are looking at units to determine eligibility. The Cal Grant program has a Cal Grant A, B, and C award. So Cal Grant A is for 2 years or more programs. At the community college, it goes on what's called Community College Reserve or CC Reserve until the student transfers to a 4-year. The minimum GPA is a 3.0. At the CSU, it does pay the tuition, and at the UC as well. UCs are now using a cohort-based tuition model, so whatever cohort the student is in, that is the amount of their Cal Grant, and it covers tuition. And then at the private schools, it pays a portion of the tuition, not all of it. Private schools typically have additional funds to provide to the student. And Cal Grant A is for our higher income students and families. Cal Grant B is for our lower income students and families. This is for a 1-year or more program. There's a minimum GPA of a 2.0 for a high school GPA or 2.4 for a community college GPA. At the community college, it's paying what's called the access portion of the Cal Grant B of $1,648. At the CSU and UCs, it will pay that tuition portion in addition to the access 1648. And then the private schools as well, same amount, and then the access funds. For our Cal Grant C, this is for our vocational and technical programs. It can be for a program as short as 4 months and up to 24 months. And it's for certificate, vocational, and trade. GPA is not required for this program. At the community college, they'll receive the $1,094. The CSUs and UCs don't have any programs that are eligible for Cal Grant C, but there are plenty of private schools that qualify, and the students will get a books and supplies portion and a tuition and fees portion. We do have a complete overview of the A, B, and C programs on our YouTube channel. So if you are wanting to go a little bit more in depth, you can watch that on our YouTube channel. Students can get confused, and even high school administrators and financial aid administrators might be a little bit confused if you're brand new to the Cal Grant A, B, and C structure. So sometimes students will ask, well, which one can I get? Do I need to apply to all of them? Am I choosing which one? And students are not applying for a specific Cal Grant. So students will simply submit their FAFSA or CADAA, their California Dream Act application, by the priority deadline. They do need a GPA uploaded either from the high school or the college, and that GPA needs to be matched to their application. But then in our system on the back end, that is where we will determine which Cal Grant the student qualifies for and which one is best, depending on the school that they are attending. So which segment they're attending will determine which one is most beneficial if they do qualify for all of them. If not, they'll just be awarded the one that they qualify for. So it's not as confusing as it might seem at first. Really, we just need that FAFSA or DREAM Act application submitted, and then CSAC will take care of the awarding part. There's also the Cal Grant B for foster youth. California has done a really great job of investing in our foster youth students. So the Cal Grant B program was expanded for this certain cohort. It's for students who are in foster care from the age of 13 for at least on up for at least one day. And what it's doing is it's expanding the high school entitlement application window. I'll talk a little bit more about high school entitlement, but basically what it means is when a student is graduating their senior year and then 1 year after graduating, they can receive a Cal Grant through the high school entitlement cycle. This is really a good way to receive Cal Grant because then they can continue to renew it each year, and it does not matter if they started a community college and then transfer to a private school, they can bring this high school entitlement Cal Grant with them. So in the past, it was always narrowed down to just the high school seniors and prior year graduates, but then Cal Grant B Foster Youth came along, and now it's expanding the entitlement application window for these students until under the age of 26. So even if they've been out of high school for a couple years or a few years, they could still qualify as long as they're under the age of 26 at the start of the award year. They do need to submit a high school GPA, so that could be something where they need to go back to their high school and ask for them to submit a GPA to CSAC. Really, the most beneficial addition for this Cal Grant B for foster youth is that now foster youth can receive up to 8 years or 800% of full-time enrollment of Cal Grant, which is fantastic because some students do take longer than 4 years. So for our non-foster youth students, they only have up to 4 years of Cal Grant eligibility, but for our foster youth students who qualify for Cal Grant B, now can get up to 8 years, so they don't have to worry about running out of money. This is also only for undergraduate though, so unfortunately they cannot roll it over into master's or PhD programs. Another addition is the Foster Youth Access Award and the Students with Dependents. So this expanded Cal Grant even more in the last few years. This adds or increases the Access Award. So for Cal Grant A, the first time ever, we now have an Access Award portion up to $6,000. Cal Grant B, that standard access of 1648 increases up to 6,000, and then Cal Grant C increases the books and supplies portion up to $4,000. These two cohorts, the foster youth and students with dependents, um, are two cohorts that could use this additional funding. So it's a really great benefit for them. The Foster Youth Access Award is for students who are in foster care anytime since age 13. So the same requirement as Cal Grant B for foster youth. And then for students with dependents, this is for anyone attending a Cal Grant eligible school with a dependent under the age of 18 that they provide more than 50% support for. So the goal with students with dependents is hopefully these students aren't having to work as many hours. They can focus more on their studies and still have money to provide for their families. Of course, we know that's not always the case, but luckily this is at least providing some additional funding. So two really great expansions for our Cal Grant program. And at the community college with Cal Grant A, with these two expanded access awards, the students will actually receive this money at the community college. So that would be the only time you would see a Cal Grant A awards being dispersed if it was the foster youth access or the students with dependents access at your campus. A little bit more about Cal Grant C. So this is free money to enroll in a vocational occupational program at trade schools or community colleges, and no GPA is required. So this can be a great option for many of your students if they're not looking to go sit in a classroom for another 2 years or 4 years. That is just not their style. They don't enjoy it. Then Cal Grant C is available to them to pursue something more hands-on and interesting that they are actually excited about. It's also available for shorter degree pathways, which could mean lower tuition costs, and then they can graduate sooner and be able to start their career sooner. And so there are so many options out there. I love that we have 116 community colleges that have many of these great programs: culinary, welding, EMT, paramedic, cosmetology. So please encourage your students to check out their options. We do have a particular priority for in-demand or for um, careers that are in demand in California. So you can check out on our website the priority occupations and let your students know to start exploring and seeing what could be of interest to them. Another program I want to highlight, since it's loosely connected to Cal Grant, is our DreamAct Service Incentive Grant Program, or DSIG. This is for CADAA applicants who are Cal Grant B eligible, and we really want to max out the annual award amount right now, or awards. Right now, we've hit about half of the awards being utilized, so we would love to increase that for this upcoming year. And so please encourage your students to apply. This is for when they are in college. They will complete 300 hours of community or volunteer service, and they can earn $4,500 per year. We have lots of information on our website. That's where the students will find the applications, work with their financial aid office, and then find a volunteer organization that they want to work for. Not only are they receiving additional funding through this program, but they're also starting to build their network. They're, meeting new people, exploring career options, and building their resume. So a really great opportunity for them. The hours need to be completed between July 1st and June 30th. So now moving into student eligibility and how students can qualify to receive the Cal Grant. Cal Grant does have some requirements, so students need to meet these basic eligibility requirements to receive the Cal Grant. A lot of these do mirror the federal Pell Grant requirements with just a few additional components. So they must be U.S. citizens or eligible non-citizens who are permanent residents or meet the AB 540 eligibility criteria, have been a California resident for 1 year, attend a qualifying California college, do not already have a bachelor's or professional degree, be enrolled at least half-time, register with the Selective Service if required to do so, do not owe a refund or on any state or federal grant, and to not be in default on a student loan, not incarcerated, maintain satisfactory academic progress, of course, aligning now with the AB 789, and have a GPA or equivalent submitted when applying. Very important to note that a couple of these, so the U.S. citizen, as I mentioned, or eligible non-citizen, and the California resident, are supplanted by the AB 540 eligibility criteria for CADAA applicants. So a little bit different for our CADAA students on the Cal Grant requirements. In terms of California residency, CSAC is going to make the preliminary award determination based on the state of residency reported on the FAFSA or CADAA. But then the colleges, so you all at the financial aid office, or maybe this is handled by your admissions and records office, depending on the relationship you have, institutions are going to make the final residency determination based on school policy. So for CSAC, though, we are basing for students under the age of 18 is based on the state residency of the parents. If the student is married or older than the age of 18, then it's based on student state of residency. Another component of Cal Grant eligibility is the income and asset ceilings. Cal Grants are need-based, so we are using the total income and assets based on family size to determine financial eligibility. The total income calculation is looking at the adjusted gross income, or AGI, plus the untaxed income minus the taxable income offsets. And that will give us the TI amount. So you can see it's based on family size as well. So for 24-25, here are the income ceilings based on family size and the asset ceilings. 25-26, the amounts do increase a bit. That can hopefully help more families as it increases each year. And we're going to go over some scenarios on how to apply this to the student situations in a couple slides. So this is just an introduction of what the ceilings look like, and then we'll walk through 3 situations. Another part of the financial need calculation is looking at our cost of attendance minus the student's SAI, and then the students need to have enough unmet need to qualify for Cal Grant. For Cal Grant A and C, that unmet need amount is quite a bit, especially because these are for our higher income families who tend to have higher SAIs. So the unmet need is the maximum award amount plus $1,500. I like to emphasize that you want to pay close attention to this because if your student's cost of attendance changes, most likely because of a budget change. So maybe they go from on-campus housing to with parent housing. Their cost of attendance will be much lower, minus their SAI could equal a much lower amount of unmet need. So just pay careful attention with any of those changes that the student still has that minimum financial need amount. For Cal Grant B, the unmet need is at least $700. Not normally an issue because Cal Grant B recipients typically have lower income with lower SAIs, and $700 is usually there for unmet need. Consortium agreements. This is a contractual agreement between colleges and universities which recognizes the student is registered at more than one school for financial aid purposes. You may be familiar with this, or maybe you've never really worked with the consortium agreements at your school, but most likely there are students who are participating in this at your campus. So it's very common where students attend multiple community colleges part-time, but cumulatively have at least half-time status, which is the minimum required to receive a Cal Grant payment. Here in the Sacramento area, we have the Los Rios Community College District, which has 4 campuses. So students who are enrolled at least half-time between all of those affiliated campuses can receive a Cal Grant payment. Whichever campus is listed as the designated payer in the consortium agreement is going to be the one that makes the payments. Consortium agreements are also typical when your school has a study abroad program, so there may be an agreement between the home and the abroad school, and the home school is the one paying the financial aid. Moving into GPAs now. So I mentioned that students need to submit their FAFSA or CADAA, and then the high school or college needs to upload and match a GPA to the corresponding application. And that's how our system knows to process the student for Cal Grant consideration. And then here's where those award cycles get broken down. So I mentioned the high school entitlement, or E1. We want students to apply with their FAFSA or CADAA by March 2nd, and we also need the GPAs uploaded by March 2nd. We do need a high school GPA for high school entitlement consideration. Cal Grant A has that 3.0 requirement and Cal Grant B has 2.0. Now, I haven't really talked about transfer entitlement yet, but transfer entitlement E2 is when a student starts at a community college and then transfers to a 4-year bachelor degree granting institution. The deadline is also March 2nd, and the acceptable GPA to be considered is the community college GPA. For Cal Grant A, it's a 2.4 minimum, and Cal Grant B, it's a 2.0. The community college entitlement, or E3, it does have a deadline of September 2nd. However, we still encourage students to submit as soon as possible by March 2nd, but if needed, there is this September 2nd community college deadline. This is for students who are attending the community college. So either maybe they came out, they just graduated high school and they missed March 2nd, and then they're starting at the community college. They could be considered under this entitlement cycle, or they took time off after high school, took a break, and now are coming back to the community college. So this is the cycle they could be awarded Cal Grant under. Acceptable GPAs include high school, community college, and the reestablished community college GPA. And then you can see here the different minimums. The reestablished is for students who have taken 24 units or less. So that can be an option for some of our students. And then lastly, we still have the competitive C1 cycle. March 2nd is the deadline. And we can also accept high school, college, or reestablished. So going back to the income ceilings and pairing it up with the GPAs, we have something here internally that we call the no Cal Grant zone. So students must meet income and GPA requirements to be considered for a Cal Grant. And we have thousands of students who don't receive it because their family income exceeds the threshold for Cal Grant B, and they do not have the minimum required GPA of 3.0 for a Cal Grant A. So we really encourage to strive for students to strive for that 3.0. Reach out for help during their classes, see if they can have tutoring, work with their teachers, because it really can greatly impact the financial aid available to them when they start college. They could lose out on thousands of dollars. So very important, there is a focus on grades when it comes to this state financial aid program. So this is where we're going to do those scenarios now. So go ahead and open up the chat box, and we are going to test your knowledge on who might qualify for a Cal Grant. So looking at the income and the GPAs. So first up, we have Jude. He has a 2.87 GPA, a family size of 4, and an income of $58,000. Does Jude qualify for Cal Grant? And if so, which one could he qualify for? Go ahead and use the chat. I see yes, B, yes, Cal Grant B, B, yep, you all are on it. So yeah, he's going to be eligible for Cal Grant B because he has a 2.87, so above the 2.0 minimum. His family size of 4, you go across here, and his family income of 58,000 is below the 69,000. So Jude is good. He can be considered for Cal Grant B. Next up, we have Mia. She has a GPA of 3.87, family size of 5, and an income of 77,000. Does Mia qualify for a Cal Grant? And if yes, which one could she qualify for? I see yes, A, Cal Grant A, A. Yeah, so you all are on it. Okay, we got the fully correct answer. Yes, A or B. We got that twice. Yeah, so A is definitely a totally correct answer as well, but for Mia, since she has this really high GPA, and a little bit lower of income for her family size of 5, she is below both the Cal Grant A and B income ceilings. And with that 3.87, she could qualify for Cal Grant A or B. And it will just depend on where she's planning to attend college. And that's how our system will determine which one is most beneficial for her. And so she is good to go. Her hard work has paid off, and she will get that money for school. All right, last scenario, we have Andrew with a GPA of 2.99, a family size of 3, and family income of $95,000. Does Andrew qualify for a Cal Grant? And if yes, which one could he qualify for? No, I see the answers coming in. No, no, no. Yeah, so unfortunately, Andrew is falling into our super scary no Cal Grant zone. With that GPA of 2.99, he just missed the cutoff of the 3.0 minimum. His family size of 3 has income above the Cal Grant B ceiling, so unfortunately, he will not be eligible for Cal Grant his first year out of high school. Now, maybe if he does really well his senior year, gets his grades up, the year after he graduates, he'll have his GPA uploaded again, and then he could qualify 1 year after graduating. He may also still be eligible for a middle class scholarship, so still definitely important for him to apply and submit his FAFSA or CADAA. If he's a FAFSA filer, he can get federal Pell Grant, so still worth it to apply, but also if he had known to get that 3.0, then maybe he would have reached out for more help, reached out for a tutor, whatever resources are available. So thank you for participating, and we are going to move on now. So with the high school GPA calculation, as we've talked about the minimums, we want to remind you all, so at the high school level, we do ask for the current seniors' GPAs and the prior year grads. So that's where Andrew could be saved because his high school GPA will be uploaded one more time, including his senior year grades. So your current seniors, you're only using sophomore and junior year grades. For your prior year grads, you're using sophomore, junior, and senior. If you need more help with this, I know we still have a couple more months before the GPAs are officially due. So we will be offering additional GPA webinars, and you can always call our school support as well if you're confused on how to calculate and how to do the 2 uploads for your current seniors and prior year graduates. We also have a web page dedicated to how to calculate this. You can go to it on the link at the bottom of this slide. For the community college GPAs, this is used for the E2 transfer entitlement and the E3 community college entitlements. For the regular GPA, this is based on 24 semester units or more. For the re-established GPA, it's based on 16 to 23 semester units. So a student who has taken a few classes and can re-establish their GPA so that they don't have to use a high school GPA if that was really low. It includes all completed college work except for non-transferable and non-credit earning courses, and failing grades must be included. If a student does not have a GPA for some of these reasons, then a test score can be submitted. However, it can only be submitted if they do not have a valid GPA, if the student has coursework that cannot be converted to a 4.0 scale, or if the GPA is older than 5 years. So maybe for some of our foster youth who are returning and their high school GPA is older than 5 years, then they could submit a test score. It's applicable to non-accredited high schools, schools that do not have an approved A through G course list, and students who were homeschooled. To submit a test score, the student will return the G4 GPA verification form. On question number 7, they will check the box and then attach their applicable test score to the form. Now, GPAs for first-time college students, if it's a former student who is going to college for the first time, as I mentioned, they can request their high school to upload their GPA up to 5 years after leaving that high school. So you may have students coming back and asking you to complete this form for them. An authorized school official must calculate that GPA and sign the form, or you can actually use WebGrants to manually key in the GPA. So that could be faster and more beneficial for the students so that it's in our system and not in any backlog of the manual work for the G4 forms.
All right, so our next section is application process. So we're going to talk all about how students apply for the Cal Grant. Now, most of you know, or I imagine you've at least heard, that the state of California has two applications. We have the California Dream Act application, or the CADAA, and we have the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. Both of these applications can apply a student for Cal Grant. The difference is the student's eligibility to file one application or another. I will go into that in a little more detail, specifically about who can file a CADAA. But just as a refresher for the FAFSA, that is the Federal Financial Aid Application, this is available for students who are U.S. citizens, eligible non-citizens, such as permanent residents, and then other students that fall under certain categories like a refugee or someone that has asylum granted status. This also includes students who hold a T visa. So again, later on, we'll talk about the qualifications to file the CADAA. In the sense, it is for students that meet AB 540 requirements. But one thing we want to drive home in this slide specifically is that students should be submitting either one application or the other. It's almost never both. There are some exceptions, especially last year after the delay in the 24-25 FAFSA release and some of the issues that we found specifically for parents who did not have a Social Security number. But typically it is that students will file either the FAFSA or the CADAA to qualify for aid. The FAFSA will qualify them or at least get them considered for federal, state, and institutional aid, whereas the CADAA, being California specific, will get them considered for state aid and institutional aid. So let's take a closer look here in a moment. Although before I do, I did want to at least let you know that we have a list of Cal Grant eligible schools on our website. So all colleges and universities in California must meet certain qualifications in order to administer Cal Grant. And so for all schools, whether they are public, private, nonprofit, for-profit, they must be participating in at least two federal aid programs, including Pell Grant and then SCOG, direct loans and or work study. They must have a federal student loan cohort default rate under 15.5%, and they must have a graduation rate greater than 30%. So to check out the list of all schools in California that can administer Cal Grant, you can follow the link at the bottom of the page. Now let's talk about deadlines. So typically the priority deadline for the Cal Grant is March 2nd. It has been March 2nd nearly every year for as far back as we can remember. Now, there was an exception last year, again, due to the delay of the 24-25 FAFSA release. The Cal Grant priority deadline was extended from March 2nd to April 2nd, and then finally to May 2nd. But that was for 24-25 only. As it stands right now, as of today, the 25-26 deadline is still technically March 2nd. Of course, there wouldn't be really a deadline without a little caveat. March 2nd, 2025 falls on a Sunday, which means whenever that deadline falls on a weekend, it is immediately pushed to the following business day. Technically, the deadline is March 3rd, 2025, which is a Monday. However, we like to keep it simple and clean, especially for those of you who use maybe different advertising or posters or flyers throughout the year. We like to stick with March 2nd. We don't want students waiting until the very last minute. But technically, a FAFSA or CADAA submitted by March 3rd of 2025 will be considered on time for 25-26. So really, all students should be applying by this date every year. This is the deadline for Cal Grants A, B, and C, and for the specific cycles, high school entitlement or E1, transfer entitlement or E2, community college entitlement or E3, and competitive. Now, moving down to the second half of the slide, September 2nd. This September 2nd deadline is for students who want a community college entitlement or an E3. So even though March 2nd is that priority deadline, if students miss that deadline and perhaps later decide that they'll be attending a community college, they do have this second chance deadline just for the specific cycle, E3. This is for Cal Grants A and B only, and only under the E3 cycle for students attending a California community college. One other caveat I want to draw your attention to the very bottom of the slide is that foster youth, so students who have been identified and confirmed as having been in foster youth at any time since age 13, can actually be considered for a high school entitlement award if they file by September 2nd. They must also have a high school GPA on file, but they do have that extended deadline. We talk a lot more about this in our foster youth specific training. So if you're interested or if you work with a foster youth population, I highly recommend that you join us for one of those webinars. Now, what if a student misses both Cal Grant deadlines? After March 2nd, they still have that second chance deadline for that community college Cal Grant, but that is September 2nd. And sometimes we have students filing a FAFSA or CADAA even after that. Financial aid applications for the award year are open through June 30th of the tail end of that year, meaning the 25-26 FAFSA and CADAA won't close until June 30th, 2026. So that means many students may be applying afterward. And we just want them to know that other types of aid are still available. Students should always apply regardless of the timing, because if they've missed that deadline, they haven't missed their opportunity completely. So for example, a FAFSA filer can still qualify for certain federal aid, such as Pell Grant, work study, and even some types of campus aid. Some scholarships that require a FAFSA on file may also be eligible even if they miss that priority deadline. Now for CADAA filers, they can also still qualify for campus aid, the California College Promise Grant, and other scholarships even if they file after the deadline. So, most important message here is that students should file whether they've missed the deadline or if they've made the deadline. Students should be aware of these deadlines, of course, and that some schools and colleges and universities have their own separate deadlines, but still, it's never too late. So now we want to talk more about the California DREAM Act application. This is the California-specific financial aid application that's typically for undocumented students who are not eligible to file the FAFSA. Now, we are planning on releasing the CADAA originally December 1st, 2024 in alignment with the 25-26 FAFSA. Of course, we are hearing different news day by day. As we head into the Thanksgiving holiday, we may see the CADAA released shortly before December 1st. But as it is right now, you can at least tell your students that by December 1st, the CADAA will be open. Same with the FAFSA. All right, so now we're specifically talking about CADAA. So first, we just want to make the disclaimer that CADAA information is private. We are using this data from the CADAA application for the express purpose of determining California state aid eligibility. This is not information that is ever shared with the federal government, and CSAC ensures that they protect the confidentiality of all student records. We have never shared this information, especially regarding a student's immigration status, whether they're documented or undocumented. And we also have to comply with the FERPA Act, which protects the privacy of student education records. Now, we recently released a memo regarding the data sharing policies and how we protect this data in terms of immigration enforcement, which is a hot topic these days. And we just want to ensure families and students that we are protecting their data. And so I highly recommend that you click the link at the bottom of the slide. Check out our most recent memo on CADAA data, which was released, I believe, on November 14th, so that you can see where CSAC stands on this topic. So now, who can apply for CADAA? Traditionally, the CADAA is for undocumented students, whether or not they have DACA status. This is also for students who have been designated as having temporary protected status, or TPS, and also for U visa holders. The CADAA is not for students, typically, who have any other type of visa, or for U.S. citizens, eligible non-citizens, and so on. Typically, these students would file the FAFSA. But we do want to say that just as last year, many of you know, CSAC was able to develop the CADAA for mixed status families in light of the issues those students were having with filing the FAFSA. Some students whose contributors did not have a Social Security number were unable to bypass certain parts of the FAFSA. And so in response, CSAC developed this special CADAA version for mixed status families, or as we call it, CADAA MSF, so that those students, even though they're FAFSA eligible, could use the CADAA to do a few things. First, to apply by their priority deadline. Second, to obtain a student aid index, or an SAI, and to also get consideration for state aid and institutional aid. That CADAA MSF application will continue being available for 25-26. But the traditional CADAA, the standard CADAA that's been around for over 10 years, has been usually for students who are undocumented, TPS, or U visa holders. Now let's take a look at AB 540. This is Assembly Bill 540, which has had a few expansions to it, but essentially students who are filing for state and institutional aid through the CADAA must meet these requirements in order to be eligible. I won't go through each one verbatim. You have a copy of this PowerPoint slide. You should have received a PDF, and of course, if you did not, you can send us an email. But essentially, students must have earned the equivalent of 3 years of full-time attendance in either high school, adult school, community college, or a combination for a total of 3 years. There is a caveat here on the right-hand side for students who maybe completed 3 years of high school coursework in fewer than 3 attendance years. They can actually fulfill the attendance requirement with elementary and middle school, so any combination of those as well. Now, part 2 is degree completion or high school graduation. This requires that the student, in addition to those 3 years, also holds a high school diploma from California or its equivalent, an associate's degree from a California community college, or that they fulfilled minimum transfer requirements at a community college to transfer to a UC or a CSU. So as you can see, there's many different ways to meet AB 540, and every student is different. It can be difficult to answer questions about very specific cases here in this webinar, which is why if you have a particular case that you'd like to have some guidance on, we recommend either reaching out to the college or university where the student is applying, if you're working at a high school, or if you are working at the college, reach out to our school support team and they can assist you with these specific cases. Now, many of you who have been in financial aid for a few years or longer know that with the passing of AB 1540, we were able to embed the AB 540 affidavit within the CADAA application. This is new as of 24-25. What it used to be is that CADAA filers had to sign an affidavit that essentially showed that they not only met AB 540 requirements, but that they also were intending on staying in California and pursuing citizenship status. Now, this affidavit, now that is embedded within the CADAA, means that we can send this self-reported data to the colleges and universities that the student listed on their application. And here in the affidavit, students are going to manually enter the full and official name of each school or campus that they attended to meet that 3-year requirement. They should enter the state and city where the school is located. They should let us know when they started there and when they ended their enrollment there. There's a new space where students can add the number of units or credits that they earned, and then they'll want to add each school as they go. As you can see here on this screenshot, there is already a school listed here, El Camino High in Sacramento, and the start date was in August of 2020, and the end date was June of 24. In the 25-26 CADAA, there will be an extra space with the units that were earned. We have a mock-up screenshot, I believe, on the next slide. But essentially, if the student had more than one school in order to fulfill that 3-year requirement, they can continue adding schools with the dates and the units earned. So this way, the student can list all of the schools where they earned the credits needed to fulfill AB 540. Now here is kind of a mock-up of what the 25-26 CADAA will look like with the new affidavit, including the number of credits or hours. When the student adds their school of attendance, they will include the number of credits or hours attended directly from their transcript. So we recommend that CADAA filers, especially those filing for the first time, should have either their high school transcript or their adult school or community college transcript handy so that they can easily enter those numbers. We have help text, so you'll see here that there are these bubbles with the letter I in the middle. By clicking on these, help text will pop up on the student's screen, which will allow them to read more details about what is needed here. So we'll give them some guidance on what credits are needed and how to fulfill this piece of the affidavit. Now, for more information, we recommend clicking the link at the bottom of the screen. This talks all about the California non-resident tuition exemption, which essentially is the AB 540 affidavit. Colleges and universities have their own, but now that it's embedded within the CADAA, many schools are using ours rather than asking for it from the students separately. So that's really great news, because the idea behind this was to remove as many administrative barriers as possible, and this is one less form that the student will have to fill out at their school. Now, we just want to give a shout out to the Dreamer Resource Centers located at many California colleges and universities. You can click the link at the bottom of the screen, which will have more information on how to find these and where they're located. But Dreamer Resource Centers, they're really great places where dreamers can go, specifically CADAA filers, undocumented students who are looking for advice. Maybe they're looking for college planning, career advice, other resources that they need that, you know, as a dreamer, they need that specific guidance. Some Dreamer Resource Centers even offer things like free legal advice. They might offer workshops and other opportunities for these students to get connected and get to the resources that they need. And so check out the interactive map where you can find where these are located. Many schools are opening up Dreamer Resource Centers, which we are very happy to see. Another really important resource that I recommend you bookmark is Immigrants Rising. This is a fantastic organization that has gone above and beyond to meet the needs of students who are undocumented but applying for financial aid, looking for employment, looking for scholarships, volunteer work, all sorts of different services. And so Immigrants Rising offers specifically for financial aid applicants. They offer AB 540 quick guides. They have an attendance tracker worksheet, which I find especially helpful when assisting students with, determining if they even meet AB 540 yet. They have toolkits for educators, and most importantly, they offer scholarships and fellowships to undocumented students. So check them out, bookmark their page, supportimmigrantsrising.org. And now, as we approach the end, let's talk about the ways that you can help students in obtaining that Cal Grant. So we're pivoting back to Cal Grant specifically, and we want to briefly talk about special or unusual circumstances. And so if you are working in a high school or if you're a student advocate, just know that when the students file their FAFSA or CADAA and they enter that 2023 income and asset information, that is not the end all be all, right? Because as many of us know, our income may have looked a lot different in 2023 compared to now. If perhaps we lost hours at our job, if we got laid off, if you had to stop working due to a medical reason or other things of that nature, the student can go to their college's financial aid office and discuss these special or unusual circumstances. So to give you an example, a student who's experienced a death in the family or their parent is incarcerated, especially for students who cannot enter parent information on their FAFSA or CADAA due to maybe an estranged relationship or they're not sure where their parent is located. These are considered either special or unusual circumstances that can lead to an appeal. And so these are situations that students, it may not look good as far as their financial aid eligibility goes, but once they're able to actually go into their financial aid office, provide any necessary paperwork, these, financial aid administrators have professional judgment abilities to make changes to the FAFSA and CADAA application. So just be aware that if there are situations that come up, please refer your students to their financial aid office. Now, in situations where a student was applying for the Cal Grant but perhaps missed our deadline, whether it was March 2nd or September 2nd, we have our own appeal process. And this is specifically regarding our G18 form, which is the Cal Grants appeal form. And this is when the student experienced circumstances beyond their control that prevented them from applying on time. One common reason that we saw, especially last year, was due to all the technical issues and, situations with the FAFSA that prohibited many students from submitting it on time. We allowed students to appeal for that reason and in turn, be able to consider them for Cal Grant using a later date. And so, as I mentioned, it's not the end-all be-all if a student misses the deadline. If there were extenuating circumstances, they should contact us to see about a Cal Grant appeal. Now, normally CSAC uses the date of first submission for FAFSA and CADAA. So if a student files on time, maybe they open it on December 1st, they get everything done, and then maybe later on in April or May, they realize, oh my gosh, I wasn't supposed to add this on my FAFSA, or I need to change the income that I reported. If they go in and make a correction, that's okay. We're still using that very first date of submission and not the dates of any changes or corrections. Now, to confirm a student's application submission date, they can log into their WebGrants for Students account as long as, if they're a first-time applicant, it's been at least 10 days since they filed the FAFSA or at least 2 days since they filed the CADAA. They can't create a WebGrants for Students account unless it's been, that application has been received in our system. And then remember that community college students who missed the March 2nd deadline do not need to appeal. as they have until September 2nd to submit an on-time FAFSA or CADAA to get a Cal Grant. And just leaving you with some other helpful tips. As we've talked about, students should file whether they've met the priority deadline or not. There are other types of aid available. And students should also apply for financial aid regardless of income. We meet a lot of students out during our workshops or during our outreach events who say, I'm simply not going to apply because I know my parents make too much. And really, the best advice you can give a student in that situation is to file anyway, because even CSAC, we have programs like the Middle Class Scholarship, which awards a grant to students whose parents' income is much, much higher than the Cal Grant income and asset ceilings. So there are aid programs available for students who think that perhaps their parents make too much, or that an independent student who perhaps works full-time and they think they make too much. Students should always add at least one California college on the FAFSA, specifically the FAFSA, because the CADAA they can only use in California. But if you have a student who's considering attending college out of state, they should still list one California school, even if they're set on leaving the state. And the reason is, if the student's plans change, if they decide to stay, or if they end up coming back midway through the year, unless they have at least one California school on the application, we won't even process them for aid because we will never have received their application. So students should list any California school just to ensure that they're in our system to be considered for Cal Grant, Middle Class Scholarship, and any other of our state aid programs. Always advise students to either create their WebGrants for Students account or check it, because on that account, they can look at their Cal Grant status, MCS status, even Chafee Grant, and they can find a lot more information about their own state aid eligibility, make school changes, all sorts of different things. They can also use it to confirm that either a high school or a college GPA has been uploaded so that they know they're going to be considered for Cal Grant. When asked, students should always opt in to receive text message alerts from us. They should also check their email. We send out emails to students, and a lot of times, they may be skipping over it. Perhaps they don't know who the Student Aid Commission is, or they're not checking their email as often. So just as a reminder, letting students know, like, hey, make sure you're checking your email, check your text messages, and so on. And then, of course, for those of you not working in the financial aid office, make sure you're encouraging students to seek out help either through us, through their financial aid office, or any other advisor that can help get them connected with the right folks. And just a quick overview of WebGrants for students. For those of you working in the schools, you may not have seen the student side before. This is what it looks like. When a student logs into WebGrants for Students, they'll have a Cal Grant portal where they can see if they have any pending requirements. They can see their school of attendance, their annual award amount, and the remaining Cal Grant lifetime eligibility. They can also do a deeper dive to see that their GPA was uploaded, what was the GPA that was uploaded, by who, and then also they can confirm their high school graduation date if they've been awarded an E1 high school entitlement. If they've been awarded an E2 transfer entitlement, they may have a transfer certification to fill out on here. And if they were awarded a Students with Dependents Cal Grant Award, they'll likely have a SWD certification to fill out on here. So all the more reason to let students know about this website, encourage them to create an account and monitor it regularly. Now let's close out with some resources for you. If you didn't know already, CSAC has a listserv where once you're registered, you will receive regular emails from the Commission regarding any updates to legislation, upcoming system maintenance or outages, Commission meetings. We'll even send out special alerts regarding deadlines, things like, GPA upload deadlines, reporting requirements, In fact, some of the most recent ones we sent out were regarding the college cost estimate forms that are due in December. We'll let you know when we've processed certain Cal Grant cycles. So if you're registered for the listserv, you will be in the know. You'll also be receiving really important memos that we've been releasing as things change as far as the political climate, right? As I mentioned, we had a very recent memo go out on privacy and that CADAA data. So please register. You can click the link at the bottom of the slide to get to the registration page. So this is a must for every financial aid administrator and for really any individual working with students applying for aid. Now, our Cal Grant handbook was recently overhauled, which I am so excited to report because as a financial aid administrator for many, many years, the handbook was something that had only been amended. It had never been completely overhauled. So now it's cleaner, it's shorter, it has succinct information, everything you need to administer this program, and it's available on our website. We are considering it a living document, which means it can be updated throughout the year and for each new academic year. So check it out, bookmark it, print it out, whatever you need to do. We also offer many other training opportunities, so we're so happy to have you here at one of our weekly live webinars. If you're a high school counselor, we offer annual statewide training specifically for high school staff and student advocates. We just wrapped up our season for this year, but we restart this workshop series usually in August. But of course, if you want to join our weekly live webinars, we have lots of great information for you throughout the year. Regional training, I just wanted to give that a quick shout out as we just finished our last regional training for 2024. I hope you were there. It was just this past week on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. This is basically a 3-day virtual series to go through really the details of Cal Grant, right? Today was Cal Grant 101, just the basics. But if you want to deep dive into the Cal Grant program, sign up for regional training. Our next 3-part series is coming this January, so you can register now. We have YouTube videos. We host our own Cash for College workshops. We'll even train the trainer. So if you want to host your own Cash for College, we'll train you on how to do it. And finally, here at the bottom, if you would like an ad hoc training for your staff, let us know if you'd like it on a specific topic. If it's just for you and your team, you can email us at training@csac.ca.gov, and we'll see if we can accommodate your request. And then I mentioned that we have regional training coming back in 2025. The first week that's coming is going to be that last week of January. So if you missed this week, we'll be coming back in January, specifically the 27th, 28th, and 29th. That should say 29 on there, my bad. And then also we'll be doing them throughout the year. So if you have new staff join you, if you want a refresher, or if you can't attend all 3 days in 1 week, you can attend them sporadically throughout the year and we'll still give you a certificate. So please join us. I hope to see you there in January. And Cash for College, if you didn't know already, these are workshops that are presented for students and families to assist them in completing the FAFSA, the CADAA, or the GPA grant. We offer them in multiple languages. We have volunteers and financial aid experts on hand. CSAC hosts them virtually, so we'll have many virtual Cash for College workshops coming up starting in December. But there are also in-person workshops being held at various high schools, community colleges, and other community locations. So check out the website. You can refer your students there or let us know if you are interested in hosting your own. I mentioned the trainer program, so this is how you can get registered. This is, again, a way to be trained on how to host your own Cash for College night, getting all the details on how the financial aid process works so that you can relay this information to your students. So we'll be offering them through April of 2025. If you click the link there at the top of the page, you can get more information and get registered for any upcoming events. Looks like our next event is coming up on November 22nd, which is tomorrow, actually. Oh my gosh, November is already almost done. Can you believe it? We'll have another one December 6th, and then we'll be back again in the new year on January 10th. That's another place I hope to see you. Visit us on social media. You should follow us. Your students should follow us because honestly, if you want to hear the very latest from CSAC, it's going to be on social media. We also offer Instagram and TikTok live sessions where staff will actually be live on camera answering questions as they come in. It's really fun. It's a great way for us to interact with our students and families. So definitely let students know that we are not only on social media, but we actively update it almost every day. So let them know. And we also have a great link tree with all sorts of resources for students. And again, another reminder that we'll have the webinar open until 2:30, so we've got about 7 minutes left. But if you have questions, you can either type them into the Q&A box, or if you are a brave soul, you can always feel free to ask us live. Now that we've concluded the webinar, you can feel free to raise your hand and ask a question. But otherwise, feel free to type it into the Q&A box as well. But if you have no questions, of course, you are free to go for the day. I just want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to spend the afternoon with us talking about Cal Grant and CADAA. And so we wish you a great rest of your afternoon and a happy Thanksgiving. And then make sure you screenshot this page to reach us later on. The training team, the school support team, and then of course student support for your students and families. I will leave this slide up for just a few minutes. Please raise your hand if you have a live question. Otherwise, type it in the Q&A, and we hope to see you next time. Thank you so much.